lot of things. You come in a moment, incidentally, where I have already resolved one by one, and coming to a position. People suggest that I may be an advisor of the insurgent.
Tell me, you study at Jamia,
Yeah.
where I know has a significant number of students from Northeast.
Yeah.
So within the professor was suggesting that almost within the class, the elite class in that sense, because universities generally consist of a certain elite, if not financial elite, but intellectual elite. Is there? Do you see a change in the way people perceive you, your classmates, your teachers, or even the general support staff?
Yeah, it's among intellectuals. It's even if they may be feeling they may be discriminated. I mean, they may want to discriminate, but the way is different from how third class people. I mean, general the way how they discriminate us is different. But sometimes we do face discrimination even in university, like admission procedure, the class and those things.
Kunal, I just wanted to come in here. You brought up this issue of the intellectual elite, people going to good schools, and something that both of you brought up is that the narrative of history needs to be changed and the awareness needs to be changed. This is something that I've experienced. That I went to one of good schools in Delhi, and my childhood friend, we went to the same school. Should have had the same educational background, same awareness level, same opportunities in life. When he met my friend from Nagaland for the first time, and she worked in a TV channel, they got talking, and he's like, "Oh, you work for so-and-so channel?" She's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Where are you from?" She's like, "I'm from Nagaland." He turned and asked her and said, "Do you need a work visa to be here in Delhi?"
What?
Yeah, that's the level of awareness from your elite schools. But it gets worse, because she said, "No, Nagaland is a part of India." And he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I got confused. I was confusing Nagaland with Arunachal." And
again, Arunachal.
So, I mean, is that something that we need to look at? I mean, when you talk about changing the narrative of history, is it the syllabus? I mean, when I studied in school, I got, sub-Cs in university, Delhi University, I took as history. Nowhere did we talk about Battle of Tennis Court in, Nagaland, World War II, or Manipur's role in World War II, which now has been recognized as the greatest battle.
Yeah.
It never came up. We never wrote, we never studied about the Ahom kingdom fighting the Mughals. We studied about the Mughals. Is this something that we need to look at, changing the syllabus from a school level and thereby creating awareness?
Exclusion of the Northeast narratives from the geography, history textbook is also a practice which is linked to the ideational component of what India is. So it cannot only be a kind of a cosmetic change here, that needs to be interrogated much more actively. I have said this before also. You must also know that colonial knowledge is not does not exist in a vacuum. It has a political context within that. That's why we said the way Western historiographic scholars write about India, romanticizing the primitive, or all kinds of preservative ideas are there. So you remember that the knowledge is not free from these churning in society and politics and all of that. History of Manipur would be there, but the choice of the term, for example, I remember a textbook which we studied by R.C. Majumder while I was in school in 70s. It talks about expedition to Manipur. That was the 1891 war, and there came one or two paragraphs. Or Bipan Chandra saying 1-2 line in NCERT textbook that Manipuris and Nagas had taken part in the nationalist struggles. Rani Gedinu is one of them. So 2 lines, 3 lines.
Yeah.
But much more, the Northeastern boys and girls will know. My generation knows much about Palas and Cholas and Kushans. Then the rest of India care to know about the Ahoms and the Ningthozas and so on. So you can see the exclusion. This is also because of a civilizational conception. That's why Northeast is an anthropological subject matter, not a historical subject. The primitive people without history, backward, they are not part of history. You know how the rest of the world was excluded by a Western epistemic frame.
Yeah.
We are history people, civilized people, these are primitive, the other world, people without history and so on.
And I mean,
that was
is that what India is doing to the Northeast?
That's why the funniest part is, most of the post-colonial scholar talks about the fact that there is a continuity between colonial state and the post-colonial state, including the way women's have been looked at, how the other women. There is an exotic part of it, primitive, dirty, but still sexually exciting, The way the Dalit women's have been looked by the upper caste, there are a lot of works interesting. The native women's by the white masters. that kind of a thing, and you know, this typical male psyche of splitting between whore and mother in psychoanalytical theory. The other woman is sexualized and our woman is eulogized and
Yeah.
easy.
I wanted to ask you, sir, in this. You know, we talk about Nagaland, Manipur. There is struggle for sovereignty which is taking place. There are many underground groups that are working there, and at least my experience in Nagaland has been that a large part of the population genuinely wants independence till now. I mean, they might not agree with the underground groups, or because they're tired of extortion, tired of violence, but they feel different. And exactly how you explained it, because it's cultural identity, historical identity. How genuine are these demands for sovereignty in the region today?
See, you have said it, you know, this is something that we have in this country, you know, issues in Kashmir Valley especially, and Nagaland, for example. I mean, you will have this. Then you can feel these impulses in other places like Manipur, Tripura, and Assam, and even Punjab to some extent. Maybe it's not that prominent. Even in Tamil Nadu, you will have this kind of thing. There are, within quote, fringe elements. Sometimes these fringe elements in some state becomes, in the majority voice. It's a challenge of being in the idea of India itself, and it is a challenge that one must address, and you cannot hide it, you cannot deny it. But the issue is often distorted. You know, you want to sail a particular, in the process of trying to retain the very structure of the Indian post-colonial state. We have responded. Some of the ways in which we have responded is undesirable, which could have an alternative way of dealing with it. These are some of the issues. But the fact that we cannot distort is that we do have these issues here in parts of this country.
Yeah.
And India did not come out of a vacuum. Beyond that is the political questions. How do we deal with it?
Yeah.
Do you recognize right to self-determinations and the politics of recognition of these people? How do you handle within the federal democratic republican order? Or, you know, these are political questions that have no easy answer.
Is there a change in the mindset of the younger generation that, you know, we want to be part of a globalized world? Because this is something that Mr. Mohiva had said, that, you know, there's globalization, we want to be part of a globalized world, no one is completely independent, you can have shared sovereignty. But is the youth thinking of, we want globalization, we want to be part of the economic boom, we want to move ahead, independence might not be that important?
It's very much hectic when I think of independent issues, Assam problem, Bodo, and these things. But whenever I see these things, you know, I feel like first we should educate ourselves and then know the value of life, and then pursue your goal, whether you want to be independent or you want to be a part of India, or you want Naga, one independent. Or first, you know, you should know the concept very clearly.
Because the reason is that there is nothing left to go back to, and there is nothing there in terms of economic development, in terms of infrastructure. In spite of 65 years of Government of India